Every cloud has a silver lining, except the one that stored Michael Proctor's text messages. If you haven't heard, oh, our boy is in some hot water. And apparently for an investigator to not know that all of your stuff is stored in the cloud, I mean, really? Now, I know there's a few of you that are like, who the fuck is Michael Proctor? So let me give you a quick second. Michael Proctor was the lead investigator in the Karen Reid case. Karen Reid was accused of killing her boyfriend, who was Boston police officer John O'Keefe. From the word go, it was a fucking setup, right? Michael Proctor was the lead investigator brought in by the state of Massachusetts because the local police, the Canton police, one of their officers was related to the guy whose house the body was found at. So the Canton police have to recuse themselves. Massachusetts State Police come in. Michael Proctor is put in charge. Now we go through the first trial, and through the first trial we discover, wow, there's so many witnesses they could have talked to. I can't count. If I had $1 for every single one of you who came into my comments and said, there's gotta be ring video. Yes, there's gotta be ring video investigating a murder, you'd get it. But they didn't, because they weren't properly investigating the murder. We come to find out that some evidence was planted, allegedly. A lot of witnesses weren't spoken to. Ring camera disappeared. There was just all kinds of bullshit that went on that made it appear that they were framing Karen Reid. Well, the first trial ends in a mistrial. But what we discovered during that trial was that there were text messages. Michael Proctor as the lead investigator, and we're talking very early, before he's even had a chance to talk to witnesses, he's texting to his coworkers and to friends who are not even in the police department that basically, like, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but like, this bitch is cooked, right? Like, he basically drew a target on her, didn't do any proper investigation, and then worked to basically make the evidence shape up around her, right? He got fired. And he didn't just get fired because of the text messages. What also came out in court was that he was like drinking on the job, and he was drinking while driving his cruiser. And basically it just came out to the public. We found out for the first time through the first Karen Reid trial that Michael Proctor is a piece of shit and a lousy fucking cop. And they have known that for probably years. So when he was fired, and especially over those text messages that he said about Karen, where he even called her a C word, and said all sorts of horrible, disparaging things about her, that all came out in court. So now the state police are like, well, okay, we should probably let him go. It's very hard to fire a cop. You gotta have a lot of evidence if you want to fire a cop. So they piled all this shit up on him and they fired him. Now, it doesn't look good for a second Karen Reid trial if you fired your lead investigator for a faulty investigation, for all of the mistakes and all of the biases he used during the investigation. How the fuck are you going to try her a second time? But they did. They came back in a second time, and all of his little cop buddies came in, got up on the stand, and were like, oh, no, he wasn't the lead investigator. We all participated. This was equal. He wasn't exactly the one in charge. In fact, I don't really recall him playing a very big part at all. Just because his signature's on 400 different reports has nothing to do with any of this. Liars. That didn't do anything to help your case. All that showed was that half the police department was fucking in on the fix. Michael Proctor should have just gone away quietly. In fact, he should have just moved out of Canton, moved to another state. You know how cops are. They can bounce around. No matter how bad they are, they can move around and still get jobs. Should have just gone someplace else and gotten a job and gone back to policing in another community. But he wouldn't let it drop. In fact, he and his wife, his tearful, remorseful wife, they did an interview. I think it was on like 2020 or some bullshit evening news program where they got to go and have all this space with very little pushback to talk about Michael Proctor didn't deserve to be fired. That those text messages were his personal phone. It was his personal feelings. He was really worked up because a cop was killed, and it shouldn't have gotten him fired. So he decided to sue and try to get his job back. He was represented by an attorney from the union. The police union said, here's your attorney. The union backed him. And then all of a sudden, within the last 48 hours, Michael Proctor's gone, oh, no, never mind. I'm dropping my appeal. Could it be because they extracted his phone? Even though he claimed that he got a new phone in 2024 and that he also now has it set to where things delete after a certain period of time, which is why he can't provide certain old texts and old emails and that kind of stuff. Well, they extracted his phone. So when he got fired after the first Karen Reid case, I'm sure every other person sitting in prison convicted of crimes when Michael Proctor was the lead investigator, every single one of those people, guilty or not, is going to come back forward and be like, I wonder if my investigation was faulty. So one of them, a guy named Brian Walsh, who I haven't looked into his case at all. It sounds like he did do it, but he's kicking up a storm. And his attorneys are like, hey, we want to reopen this. We want to look back through the records. We want the investigation investigated, just to make sure. And so for evidence in that case, extracted Proctor's phone again. Probably almost, I would bet they probably did it as like, let's prove he's a good guy. Yeah, that's not the case. They found hundreds of thousands of items that they failed to disclose. So when they're talking about specific cases and Proctor goes, oh yeah, here's my old text messages, here's my old information, and they don't hand it all over, and then an extraction of your phone shows hundreds of thousands of things you failed to disclose. And I'm led to believe, I have not seen them, I don't have any proof, but I'm led to believe that if he would openly text friends and coworkers that he thought Karen Reid was a bitch who deserved to go to prison, God knows what he's been saying all of this time. God knows what he's been saying about other defendants, other possibly innocent people. So suddenly Michael Proctor's like, never mind, I don't want my job back. Never mind, because there's something so fucking juicy in there. In fact, there could be stuff in there that's criminal. We don't want everyone else who doesn't already think he's a complete piece of shit to know he's a total piece of shit. So his union attorney backed out of the case. When you lose the police union, you're screwed. The police union is no longer defending him. So Michael Proctor's dropped the appeal. He said he no longer wants his job back because he's probably realized, I'm telling you, there's something in there that's probably so horrific. Maybe he's committed perjury. Maybe he's done something, allegedly, all supposed, but there's a big difference. Is it worth fighting for your job when you might get arrested for crimes? No. So Michael Proctor has decided he doesn't want his job back, and good, because the state of Massachusetts does not need another corrupt, derelict, drink on the job idiot of a cop out there investigating murders.